Okay, I call to order the April meeting of the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. Thank you to those joining us in the boardroom and by way of live stream today. As we start our meeting, I'll note that item 6, an update on the 2026 Special Olympics USA Games, will be postponed to a future meeting. Okay, we'll begin today's agenda with the formal introduction of our new Vice President for Information Technology and Chief Information Officer, Tarek Tomes. President Cunningham and Executive Vice President Goldman, would you please join me at the podium?
Thank you, Chair Hipsch. Well, I'm very excited about Tarek. I want to make sure I let Executive Vice President Goldman make this official introduction, but I wanted to offer a warm welcome. We are thrilled to have Tarek Tomes join us as the University of Minnesota's Vice President for Information Technology and Chief Information Officer. VP Goldman.
Chair Hipsch, President Cunningham, and members of the board, it is my pleasure to officially introduce Tarek Tomes as our new Vice President and Chief Information Officer. While I shared Tarek's impressive credentials with you in February, today marks a new chapter as he officially takes the helm of our technology enterprise. In his first weeks with us, Tarek has already begun demonstrating why he is the right leader for this pivotal moment in higher education. Tarek joins us with a clear conviction that technology, when truly aligned with our mission, is not just a utility, it's a strategic engine. He views IT as a digital connector that accelerates discovery and redefines what is possible here at the university. At a time when transformational technologies are reshaping the landscape and teaching and learning, Tarek brings a steady hand of a leader who has navigated complex, high-stakes environments at the state level. But more importantly, he brings a commitment to human-centered leadership. Tarek was selected following a national competitive search process, and I want to thank our search committee, led by Dean Lisa Germain and Vice President Mike Volna, for their diligent work in identifying a leader of his caliber. Following his exceptional service as the state of Minnesota as CIO and a member of the governor's cabinet, and his extensive leadership in the private sector, we're fortunate to have Tarek's vision, his stability, and his deep personal investment in our land-grant mission. Please join me in officially welcoming our Vice President and CIO, Tarek Tomes.
Okay, our second item is approval of the minutes and the consent agenda. The draft reports are included in your docket. The consent report includes gifts and a report of the naming committee. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question, make a comment, or separate an item out to be voted on separately before I invite a motion to approve the minutes and the consent agenda? Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes and the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay. Next, we'll hear the report of President Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair Hipsch, and good morning, everyone. Throughout the spring semester, our university community has come together to navigate the challenges facing our state and higher education. We continue to advocate for the long-term sustainability of our medical school and prioritize the safety and well-being of all. We've done this while advancing our three-part land-grant mission of teaching, learning, and research scholarship outreach and public service. Recently, we've made a concerted effort to be a little louder and prouder in highlighting these mission advancements and sharing the good news of how our university turns achievements into value for Minnesota, the nation, and the world every day. The university's success starts with its academic excellence. We are strong and getting stronger. We have top programs in the country for transportation science and technology number 3, communications number 4, ecology number 5 in the country, and biotech number 7. Our medical school is distinguished nationally as a Tier 1 institution for primary care education and ranks number 2 nationally for training Native American physicians. Our Hubbard School of Journalism and Mass Communication is ranked number 6 globally. We have so much to be proud of. For these successes and more, we owe a debt of gratitude to our accomplished faculty. This week, we recognized 21 faculty at the Distinguished Teaching Awards celebration. Faculty, as well as staff and students, are also playing important roles in advancing our strategic roadmap, Elevate Extraordinary 2030. In the last several weeks, we've made progress in 3 key areas on our roadmap. First, we launched an AI hub to advance artificial intelligence, innovation, education, and workforce development across Minnesota. As we convene partners across academia, industry, government, we're developing leading programs and an ethical and responsible framework for AI here in our future. Second, we announced a new partnership between Second Harvest Heartland and the University of Minnesota Foundation to further the vital work we're doing to address food insecurity. This partnership expands the Boynton Health Nutritious You Food Pantry, increases fresh food availability, selection, and service hours, and streamlines our operational costs. Later this year, we plan to launch similar partnerships in Morris, Duluth, Crookston, and Rochester. Third, we became one of only 45 colleges and universities throughout the U.S. to adopt the Okanagan Charter this past week. Again, part of our strategic plan. This means we've made a commitment to embed health into all aspects of the university culture and to lead health promotion locally and globally. I really want to recognize and thank our student representatives who recommended that the university consider adopting this charter. Your voices can and do make a difference, and thank you. In addition to advancing our Elevate Extraordinary 2030 roadmap, we're making great progress on another board priority, our university marketing and communications strategy. In our 175th year, we're planning activities at the state fair and county fairs across Minnesota, and we'll be rolling out a new brand this fall to showcase how the university is delivering on its mission and engaging all of Minnesota in the process. And Vice President Gotti will have a full update for you later in the meeting. Aligned with the vital work being done around Elevate Extraordinary and marketing and communications, we continue to focus on attracting, retaining, and preparing students to build Minnesota's future workforce. To attract students and deliver more for them than any single campus could do on their own, we're in the process of unifying our enrollment marketing strategy. And so while there'll be a distinctive mission for each campus to position all of them for long-term success, we continue to act as one university while, of course, continuing to market and brand the identities of the individual campuses. We're also hiring a vice president of enrollment management, who we talked about yesterday as part of our system-wide enrollment strategy, who will lead this process. To retain and prepare students, we're responding in real time to the needs of our state. For example, Minnesota Carlson has refocused its curriculum around supply chain and operations, and we've increased the College of Science and Engineering undergrad footprint by 16% in the last 3 years, well on our way to meeting our goal of a 20% increase between 2023 and 2028. We've also reinvented ourselves to sustain and strengthen our land-grant mission. In March, I spoke about how we're doing this at the Minnesota Chambers Foundation's Workforce Summit. We're expanding experiential or real-world learning to ensure our graduates will be workforce ready. We're collaborating with businesses to upskill our talent for AI, and we're reimagining the St. Paul campus, a main attractor for agricultural-focused students and a key for the ag industry's future. And we're championing the value of a University of Minnesota education throughout Minnesota and beyond. As we go forward, we'll be working towards ambitions that exceed all expectations, building on 175 years of strengths to modernize our future, advancing our academic mission to compete nationally and globally, growing our economic and volunteer impact to make an even greater contribution in Minnesota, and making strides towards one university. This includes a shared calendar for all campuses, alignment around our alumni communities, and centralization throughout the University of Minnesota Foundation. At 175 years strong, the University of Minnesota has something to celebrate across every college, campus, and unit. If we look at the recent success of our student athletes across the university, this year the University of Minnesota had more connections to Team USA, did we watch the Olympics, than any other NCAA school, and 7 of them are now Olympic gold medalists. Our UMD hockey team returned to the NCAA tournament for the 16th time in program history. Our Gopher women's basketball team advanced to the NCAA Sweet 16 for the first time in 21 years. What a fun game. Congratulations to our women athletes. And our UMD's women's basketball team capped a historic season with the Division II Elite 8 run. Elite performances extend to the Cathedral of St. Paul as well. Here on the first weekend of spring, choirs from across our university joined together in song. They celebrated the university's artistic excellence and performed Hail Minnesota with great pride. We also took a unified university approach to our annual day at the Capitol. Students, faculty, and staff from a variety of campuses, colleges, and units came together to represent our university in maroon and gold. That morning, we held a press conference advocating for 3 capital investment projects, modernizing university facilities, reimagining our St. Paul campus, and renovating Minnesota's one and only dental school. Altogether, we participated in 74 meetings just that day with state legislators. Earlier this spring, I had the opportunity to connect with Olympic gold medalist Abby Murphy, the all-time leading goal scorer for Gophers women hockey. I wanted to know how our university helped prepare her to compete on a global stage. We've captured her answer in a video I'll share with you just in a moment. I hope it leaves you feeling both a sense of pride in the value of our university education and all the ways our students are positively impacting Minnesota, the nation, and the world. Cue video. There we go. Thank you.
We're so glad you clearly made the right choice to come to the University of Minnesota. And then how did, being part of our hockey program here, how did that help prepare you for this, moment of representing the country?
A lot. I mean, the resources that you guys allow us to have here on campus is ridiculous. Can't really compare it to anywhere else, which is why we're so grateful here to be a part of the women's hockey program and a part of the U. So, but yeah, I mean, it's shaped me to be a better person, being a part of so many groups outside of hockey and the schooling. It helps make you a better person. I've met a lot of really cool professors who have kind of taught me lifelong lessons of accountability and stuff like that. So really grateful for every experience for sure.
Thank you, Chair Hipsch.
Thank you, President Cunningham, for your report, and thank you for advancing the priorities of the University of Minnesota. Turning to my report, I would like to highlight some of the ways in which my fellow Regents have been engaged across the system since our February meeting. Regents participated in the university's 2026 Day at the Capitol, joining our students, faculty, and staff to engage directly with our legislators. A thank you to everyone involved in planning the Day at the Capitol. It was a great day and a great opportunity to advocate for the university at the state legislature. Regents also engaged in alumni events, a public engagement conference, and distinguished teaching awards, as well as an onboarding visit to the Rochester campus. Several Regents attended the annual Association of Governing Boards National Conference on Trusteeship in Denver. Those Regents heard from national experts on the many issues facing higher education and gained insights into governance best practices. They also connected with other Big Ten regions of trustees, building relationships with our peers. Looking ahead to May, my colleagues and I are thrilled to celebrate the accomplishments of the class of 2026 by conferring degrees at nearly 30 commencement ceremonies across the university. I continue to be impressed by the vibrancy and the impact of our great institution. Being able to experience the many places and hear from the talented individuals who deliver on the university's mission is truly remarkable. That concludes my comments, and let's continue with our agenda. Okay, item number 5 is the receive and file reports, which includes the virtual forum comments. Please note those comments are included in the docket materials. Now I'd like to welcome Ethan Ellis, Madison Hilliard, and Vera Burkowski, Chair, Vice Chair, and member of the student representatives to the Board of Regents respectfully. Thank you all. We have read your report materials and look forward to your presentation. Please proceed. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Hipch, for the opportunity to speak to the board today. My name is Ethan Ellis. I am the chair of the Student Representatives to the Board of Regents, the Graduate Student Representative to the Board of Regents, the Speaker-elect of the Council of Graduate Students, and a fourth-year PhD candidate at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs. Madison, are you on Zoom?
No.
Okay. Would you like to?
Well, good morning to the board. My name is Vera Barkowski. I am one of the student representatives to the Board of Regents and the Secretary of Regents for the Professional Student Government this year. I'm a second-year law student at the University of Minnesota Law School, and it looks like Madison's with us
She's
now.
on now, yeah.
Great.
Go ahead, Madison.
Good morning. My name is Madison Hilliard. I am the Vice Chair of the Student Representatives to the Board of Regents, and I am a fourth-year undergraduate student at the University of Minnesota Crookston.
In today's presentation, we will share how the past year has affected the lives of Minnesota students. First, we will discuss how external headwinds, including immigration policy and enforcement, a lack of affordability, and cuts to the university budget and federal grants have impacted the student body and the university community. Next, we will highlight the actions taken by the University of Minnesota and the important work carried out by its departments to address the needs of students. And finally, we will present our steps forward and recommendations for initiatives, investments, and improved procedures for the university to implement.
Outside headwinds have had a tremendous impact on the university and the lives of its students. While we recognize that the Board of Regents has no control over these forces, we still believe that it is important to acknowledge them and their effect on the student experience, and that the Board of Regents prepare for whatever may come next. University of Minnesota students were deeply affected by Operation Metro Surge. International students and students of color reported being afraid to leave their homes or travel off campus. Meanwhile, many students took to the front lines, assisting in community watch groups, mutual aid efforts, and attending protests, showing up for one another and showing the best of what the University of Minnesota has to offer. Beyond Operation Metro Surge, broader changes to our immigration system and the way our country treats immigrants have been felt by our international students. In the wake of statements regarding international student speech by the United States Secretary of State and high-profile instances of stops of foreign nationals at airports, many international students have scrubbed their social media accounts of any content that may be construed as political, self-censored research on topics that could be interpreted as critical of the current presidential administration, ceased attending protests, and even canceled trips home to visit family. Furthermore, proposed changes to student visa duration of status would create additional hoops for our international students to jump through as they attempt to complete their studies. In addition to immigration policy, fiscal pressures at both the federal and state level have squeezed university finances. This topic has been much discussed at the Board of Regents. meetings. However, these cuts and threats to higher education funding have not gone unnoticed by students. Students at all of the campuses are keenly aware of the need for infrastructure improvements that would come through HEAPR. The cancellation of federal grants have made research assistantships more competitive to attain, and graduate students report less certainty about the ability to secure external funding to conduct research. The proposed elimination of the federal Graduate Plus loan program would make master's and professional degree programs unattainable for future cohorts of students. At the same time, cost of living increases have reduced students' standard of living and increased food insecurity. While a precarious job market causes anxiety for students' financial futures.
Despite ongoing challenges, the university system has made meaningful progress in improving students' safety, well-being, and access to resources. These aspects support the idea that student success depends on both academic and overall quality of life. Mental health is a growing priority as student stress, anxiety, and depression increases. Resources like Timely Care provide 24/7 virtual counseling, psychiatry, and health coaching. Additional support including visiting psychiatrists, online tools, peer-led wellness workshops, and early intervention systems like the CARE team and Red Folder. Support for international vulnerable students has improved at the main campus through the implementation of safety training to learn civil rights and transportation assistance. The option to complete a degree remotely is also available to students who are facing visa-related challenges. However, this option is limited for those working towards a degree that is not lab or clinical based. However, communication regarding these policies has been inconsistent, and improving transparency would better support the affected students. While these resources exist, increasing clarity and developing contingency plans would aid in reducing student anxiety. Basic needs insecurity remains a widespread issue, with many students facing food and housing challenges. While campuses have expanded resources like food pantries, distributing over 120,000 pounds of food in the fall of 2025, barriers such as stigma and lack of awareness limit usage. This includes encouraging students' participation in programs such as SNAP and WIC. Further efforts aim to strengthen long-term support through increased funding and accessibility. At Crookston, it is noted that the Eagles Essential Pantry provides essential items such as food, hygiene products, and clothing, and promotes community support through donations and resource distribution.
Despite these necessary steps forward, there are several areas in which the university leadership can improve its service of students. One of the key themes felt by the recognized student government associations and our constituents is student voice. In the past year, numerous decisions have been made either without adequate student input or above the objections of the RSGAs. These decisions have led to a reduction in trust in university leadership in many corners of the student body. These decisions include the resolution on institutional speech, the lack of communication with the Morris Campus Student Association during the chancellor turnover, the Council of Graduate Students receiving no formal input in the search for a new Dean of Graduate Education, the general opaqueness and lack of student input in the selection of a new provost, the abrupt closure of the Boynton Dental Clinic, and the imposition of the new athletic fee. Each of these decisions have frustrated groups of our constituents. While this is not the forum to litigate each of these decisions, it is clear that providing greater avenues for the RSGAs to represent their constituents in these decisions, allowing us to serve as liaisons between university leadership and the student body and explain to students how these decisions were made, and ensuring concerned students feel their voices have been heard in these processes is necessary to improving trust.
Although the university and its units have made advances and have responded to the needs of students, additional steps must be taken to maximize resources and to build trust between the student body and the administration. First, we urge the university to continue investing in liberal arts education through expanded faculty and course offerings, and to support liberal arts programming across its campuses. The university should strongly support cross-campus collaboration and the sharing of academic opportunities and resources between campuses. For example, the administration can strategize how the University of Minnesota Morris can share its music, theater, and fine arts resources with the Twin Cities and other campuses to improve the educational experience for all students. Additionally, integrating the humanities with STEM-focused programs, sharing online academic services between campuses, and developing other creative solutions to improve liberal arts investment aligns with the university's 2025 to 2030 strategic plan. We also strongly urge the university to continue addressing the physical, communication, and resource infrastructure needs on the Crookston and Morris campuses. On Crookston's campus, for example, administrators can use targeted surveys and communication to determine which subsets of the student population utilize the campus's emergency funds and demonstrate financial need. On Morris's campus, the university can and should support improving the physical infrastructure of the library and other academic buildings by addressing signs of wear, other physical damage, and accessibility concerns. In general, the student representatives to the Board of Regents support streamlined, targeted communications with students and creative means of identifying student needs more clearly. Data-driven decision-making and maintaining the good condition of campus buildings is the path forward. Finally, we want to highlight the work of student leaders who have extensively lobbied for an on-campus grocery store and other basic needs initiatives. Again, this is an example of a creative and viable solution to an identified student need on University of Minnesota campuses. We take this opportunity to strongly support the development of an accessible and affordable on-campus grocery store and other basic needs programs, and urge the university to play an active role in their creation and sustainability throughout the years to come. Meeting student basic needs is foundational to successful learning and a positive educational experience at this university.
While there's much to consider in both this presentation and in the written report, we would like to highlight 3 concrete recommendations. Firstly, to address the issue of student voice, we suggest formalization of procedures for communicating major policy, personnel, and resource changes to the RSGAs. Secondly, to address external headwinds through collective action, we suggest taking steps to actualize the Big Ten Mutual Academic Defense Compact, which has been endorsed by 14 Big Ten university and faculty senates, including the University of Minnesota University Senate. Finally, to build on momentum in serving students' material needs, we encourage the university to continue its investments in student health and basic needs programs.
Questions we ask you to consider are: how can we, as student representatives and RSGAs, better serve as liaisons between the Board of Regents and the students? How can the Board of Regents and RSGAs better partner to protect vulnerable students? And what should be the student-focused priorities of the 2026-2027 academic school year?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, student representatives. I'm sure I speak for my colleagues in expressing how grateful and helpful the thoughtful comments and perspectives that you students bring to our community discussions and throughout your report each year. We appreciate the additional time you take out of your academic work to bring the student voice to our deliberations. So thank you again. And I'll ask the president if she has any comments, and we'll open it up to the board.
Thank you so much for your comments this morning. And also, as you folks know, I meet regularly both with your groups as well as across the student government groups. And I really also appreciate the student government groups. We had a lot of informal conversations across the difficult times of Metro Surge, and the input and back and forth was really critical to how we made adjustments. And you had some wonderful suggestions in concrete things that we could do and we would do. And so
I really appreciate that. I want to highlight some of the things you talked about that we indeed are really working on, that cross-campus collaboration for coursework and things like that as part of our university planning right now, and we're very excited about that. I do hear the grocery store component, and perhaps, I mean, this is something we share, this desire. The food insecurity issues are real. We're making progress. There's more work to do, and that's because your student voices have been so centered and important. We're certainly exploring all the options also around, I've heard for the grocery store component, so know that we do hear that. I want to talk about the collective action component. Know that we are working typically across the AAU as the best advocacy organization, and we have collectively advocated and even litigated with the AAU as our organization on an assortment of federal policies. And I see folks in the audience here as we push back against indirect cost changes and other components with our peers, and do that in a way that we think we choose that path because that's the path we think is the most effective. In terms of the student voice on the searches, I really hear you. And I know we do have students on the searches. They're not always student government representatives, and that's a balance for us on how many different students and different campuses that can be represented, and whether it's student government or student. But I do hear that, but all of our searches have students on them, including the graduate student and the provost searches and those other ones. But I do hear you want representative student groups on that, and we'll try to take that into more consideration going forward. But thank you for all of the time and your advocacy and the work that you're doing. And we're listening and we hear you. And together, I think we're making good progress. Thank you.
Thank you, President Cunningham. In your report was very well written. I mean, very detailed. And I really appreciated that you went back several, I don't know how many generations you went back, and brought up different issues and brought that context to us, because usually it's just what the current events and how have we done. But one of the things you brought up in there that I was really intrigued by, and I could use a little more detail on, is I think it was in affordability. You talked about 9 items of affordability, and 2 of the items that we completed, and 4 items that we're working on, and 3 items that we haven't yet started. But you don't say, those aren't detailed out. I'd like to see what we've completed, what we've started on, and what are the 3 items that you'd like to see regarding affordability. Not making any promises that we can do anything, but I'd sure like to see all those. So that's just my comment, and I just want to congratulate you guys on a very well-written. I mean, that must have taken a lot of work. So thank you very much. And Regent Bergstrom.
Thank you, Chair Hips. And I just want to add my thanks. Your role, and I've been in your seats as a former student government nerd, and I appreciate.
He means that in the nicest way.
100%. Look, you don't do it. You're not doing it, for the pay, right? And I hope you're getting something out of it, education-wise. But your voices, the RSGAs, are so critical to our governance model. And your presence here, not just at the meetings, the committee meetings, but your communication with us throughout the year. To your first question, I think we can do more of it, right? But your work is so important to us being better at our jobs. So thank you for the time you put into it and all the consideration.
Are there any other regents with any questions? Regent Lugar.
Thank you, Chair Hipsch, and I also want to add my thanks and really well done. And I would just add I had a similar question to Chair Hipsch. I would very much, and I think all of us would very much like to understand what were the 3, I think you mentioned in the report, 3 recommendations that you had that we didn't begin to work on, and so we'd love to know what those are. Thank you.
Could follow up.
Yeah. Regent Turner.
Thank you for your report once again. In regards to engagement, with the students, I just I was in the audience for the Governance and Policy Committee meeting, and the first topic was all about how we have been starting to engage in other ways as Regents other than just the board. So the board meetings. So I know I personally would ask you that if there's events that are going on in the student world, that you could let our board office know that we could attend. I mean, I'm only speaking for myself, but I would appreciate knowing about those and being able to, show up at them. Is that something you could consider?
Yeah, that's definitely a reasonable ask. Thank you, Regent
Thank you.
Turner.
Is there any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I just want to thank you again, and thanks for your advocacy on behalf of the U at the legislature and everywhere you guys are. Your voice is really important, and we appreciate you coming here today, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. For our next item, we will hear the annual update on Native American affairs. I would like to welcome Senior Advisor to the President for Native American Affairs, Karen Diver, to the presenters table. Senior Advisor Diver, please proceed whenever you're ready.
Mayor.
Go ahead.
Chair Hipsch, it's my pleasure to introduce our next presenter, Karen Diver. She is many of you know her, but also perhaps some are new. She's the inaugural senior advisor to me as president for Native American Affairs. Senior Advisor Diver is a trusted member of my team, adding tremendous value to our priority initiatives throughout the University of Minnesota. We are so fortunate to have Senior Advisor Diver. Her prior roles include faculty at the College of St. Scholastica and the University of Minnesota Duluth, Special Assistant to the President for Native American Affairs under President Obama, and Chairwoman of the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. Like so many of us here today, Senior Advisor Diver has Minnesota ties that run deep. Before earning her master's from Harvard University, she graduated from the University of Minnesota Duluth with a bachelor in economics. She's been such a trusted advisor to me for these nearly 2 years, and her guidance has strengthened our connections with our tribal partners. Senior Advisor Diver, welcome. We appreciate all you do for the University of Minnesota and look for your update.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, members of the Regents, and President Cunningham. I'm happy to be here to give my annual report. My first one was 5 years ago, as I was 2 weeks on the job. So hopefully this one will be a little lengthier. Have an update on enrollment. We have held steady with slight increases in undergraduate and graduate education. Professional students, a slight drop. And then the Native American Promise Tuition Program was greatly aided by state of Minnesota dollars that covered tuition and fees. We maintained our commitment at the University of Minnesota and moved students closer to that full cost of attendance and tried to capture more cost for the students. Affordability, of course, you will see in my footnotes where I tied it to the Truth Report, which is the report given to us by tribes around their priorities, and affordability was one of them. So that maintaining that support meets some of our commitment and requests from tribal leaders. Creating support and pathways, and just reiterating our commitment to education as a part of building self-sufficiency for tribal communities and their citizens. The American Indian Studies PhD program has robust applicants, and they admitted 5 students, 4 new applicants and 1 deferral student, showing interest in that new PhD program. So very much grateful for expanding that into the PhD arena. We are in need of an Ojibwe linguist. Language and culture is something that's incredibly important to tribes. It's a protective factor for our youth. It's a part of our wellness. And a part of one of the main asks of tribal government is to maintain that commitment. The provost and the dean of CLA are aware of it and working diligently with American Indian Studies to find a solution for that. American Indian Studies in Duluth continues to have faculty faculty vacancies, of course, with state funding not being consistent or necessarily robust. That makes it difficult, but they are maintaining their capacity using adjuncts and with additional help from existing faculty. So as things change, we'll be looking to see what we can do to stabilize the faculty in the Duluth department. Supporting tribal sovereignty and cultural heritage. Tribal leader meetings happen with President Cunningham 3 times a year. We'll be having some discussions with tribal leaders to see if that's enough or a little too much attention, as we have made progress on our goals as outlined by the tribes. There has been a little less to talk about with tribal leaders. They have built relationships outside of the president's office. They feel like they're being supported. And of course, they are also going through interesting times these days with their governance and their priorities within their own communities. So we'll have that conversation with them. Once again, topics raised our workforce development needs and cost of attendance. In particular, with workforce development needs is the need for health careers. With the focus of this institution around growing rural and meeting the needs of the healthcare workforce, we'll make sure we're having conversations with leaders within the system about how we can make sure that we are paying special attention to Native American applicants and learners to ease their path into those workforce development programs. President Cunningham is required by Board of Regents policy to meet with the chairs of the American Indian Advisory Board once a year. I'm coming to you about a month early this year, and so that meeting will happen later this month as required by policy. In terms of Elevate Extraordinary, strategic imperative number 3, grow our national leadership in partnership with tribal nations and Native American and American Indian studies. There is a robust committee from across the system that is developing desired outcomes and initiatives from that. I am assisting them where I can and look forward to having further discussion with you in the upcoming years about how that strategic imperative ends up being implemented. One of the things I report to you every year on is the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. For those of you that were here last year, I made you aware that we hired a staff member dedicated to that. They are meeting monthly with tribal historic preservation officers in the state, as well as doing a system-wide inventory. It is somewhat robust, the inventory that we have, because it's not only potential ancestors, it's also what would be considered cultural patrimony. And so getting kind of a handle on what that inventory looks like. Some items have been repatriated already. The biggest one that you were probably monitoring as Regents was the Mimbre's ancestors from the Southwest. What changed under the last administration at a federal level is that tribes drive the process, not the institutions holding the items. So we have been working at the University of Minnesota closely with the affected tribes. They have developed their own process for receiving those ancestors back. They ran into some issues finding a safe place. They think that's resolved, so we'll be hearing more about that and hopefully bringing that to some level of conclusion. They are happy with how we've been caretaking and how responsive we have been, and they ask that we allow them the privacy to return those ancestors at a time to be disclosed at a later point. But one of the items that did come up was the Minnesota Historical Society that has University of Minnesota items that we maintain compliance responsibilities for. So we've been inventorying that and have been greatly assisted by the anthropology department, lending us some graduate students and things like that to assist. So we're getting a better handle on that. So the bottom line in it, we are compliant. And doing what the tribes wish on the timelines that they wish and communicating with them fully about what we know. New in the last year was the development, it kind of got its legs under it in the last year, is the Tribal Liaisons Community of Practice. The deans have identified staff, in some cases DEI staff, and in some cases others that have more equities within what we call Indian country, to serve as tribal liaisons. Unfortunately, I figured out that I can't be everybody's liaison, and that it's really most important for me to assist the president and other executive level leaders in their relationships. Nor does it make sense for everybody to be talking to tribal elected officials at their level. Tribes have capacity issues like any other institution. So the Tribal Liaison Community of Practice is really about developing that discipline level relationships with tribes at the appropriate level and the same discipline level. And it's not about always asking for something when we have something on our plate. It's about developing those respectful relationships and communications and reciprocity over time. We do want also to enable tribal research, right? And have them give us ideas of new scholarship that would be desirable to them in their own leadership and their own governance. So this committee did develop some consultation guidance that is on my webpage. And then this summer they will, after spending a year developing that and training themselves and working with me, they will be starting their tribal visits hopefully over the summer. And then I already spoke of this. The Center for American Indian and Minority Health has an Indigenous Health Professionals Alliance, which is at the faculty and staff level in the schools. The provost has greatly assisted me in moving this forward and identified Dean Guy to be a leader among the health-serving colleges, and continued discussions about how we may more formally develop some of that institutional guidance at the dean level and coordination, and how we can leverage and bridge between institutional advancement and kind of that grassroots and programmatic level. So making that bridge hopefully over the next year. And then you can see the website. It's got some really good things on there if you ever are in need of something extra to do. The training hub continues to get good usage for the tribal university relations training. It is, of course, required of researchers, in particular, that might be working with tribes. I mentioned the consultation guidance. This year, in order to continue to fully implement the Indigenous research policy that was approved by faculty governance, we did develop some outreach materials, some materials to guide researchers on the things they need to do before submitting to the IRB and how to be prepared for that process. And that has been going very well. I am enormously grateful to the sponsored projects and the IRB for helping me and really assisting and owning that Indigenous research policy as belonging to everybody and not kind of leaving it up to me solely. And the faculty has embraced it and has been building their own capacity. The Cloquet Forestry Center continues to be something the return of that to the Fond du Lac Band is something that continues to be worked on by the University of Minnesota. As you are aware, we got close the first year. The legislation, required legislation was introduced, but they failed to pass a bonding bill. Last year, of course, no bonding bill. And then this year, it is also included in the bonding bill. The sponsors have been consistent through the legislature, and the University of Minnesota government relations team continues to work quite closely with the Fond du Lac Band's government relations folks to make sure that the messages are aligned and we are speaking with one voice. In the meantime, boots on the ground, CFANS has worked really closely with Fond du Lac to make sure that the research that is conducted at the Cloquet Forestry Center is continuing, that it is robust. Fond du Lac has signaled that while a change in ownership might occur, they are supportive of the mission of CFANS, that they support the growth and continued support of forestry professionals, many of which they have hired, and also contributing to the scholarship about good forest management, and bringing kind of some traditional ecological knowledge into play that has been quite welcome by our staff at the Cloquet Forestry Center. So that is a work in progress. And with that, I thank you, and I am happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much for your great report. Are there any questions or comments from anybody? Chad Johnson, Regent Chad Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Hipsch. Just want to thank Senior Advisor Diver, and just wanted to add to the comments that the President made, how fortunate we are to have Karen Diver here. She is one of the strong voices for Indian country, and all of her credits were listed. She used to be my boss, and no matter where we sit, she will always be a tribal leader, and I'll always be her lackey tribal attorney. So anyway, but just a couple of things. With regard to why is an Ojibwe linguist so important to the American Indian Studies Department? Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
There is a lot of scholarship that's been developed that, especially for youth, giving them access to language and culture is a protective factor. We do know that if you look at all of the social indicators, we are still trying to reverse trauma, create wellness in our community, and we would much rather do that before the age of 18 with a positive self-identity, connection to elders, to community, to spirituality, than have to do remedial programs or incarceration or opioid addiction. It's really a preventative factor for our youth. It's also, if you don't mind my saying so, just a part of the right thing to do. When you look at the history of this institution, creating that capacity on tribes to really embed those languages within their communities is a restorative function on the part of the University of Minnesota. There was a point with which I know as a tribal leader, and tribal leaders before me were really investing in tribal language teachers, and they were hiring all of them. So is there going to be a critical mass? Are you going to have 120 necessary learners? No, but the reach of every single one, you are able to build towards fluency and be able to teach, and to be able to communicate in that way has just a measurable impact on community. We never really have those numbers in Indian country, right? And so a part of this, I think, is just responding to the truth report and taking the actual expressed desire of tribal leaders at their word.
Thank you. Just a couple more, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And University of Minnesota Duluth students currently take their language courses from the Twin Cities campus, so it's important to them as well. As a tribal leader, you led an effort to have one of the most successful hospitals and clinics in probably in the country. And in talking to the UMD faculty, they're very interested in creating a certificate program that can simulate some of your accomplishments there. I don't know if they've talked to you about that, and I just wanted to know what you thought of that idea.
And I also would like to acknowledge President Cunningham in that she toured the Fond du Lac Human Services Division and was able to see for herself really government innovation in the tribal sphere in healthcare and practice. It is so incredibly holistic, and it really is geared towards wellness. That model is replicable. And I think that there is a role for us to play, especially building off the Master's in Tribal Administration and Governance program as a component of that. Right now, Fond du Lac is doing it out of kind of the goodness of their heart, but they are not teachers. So curriculum development and training, one of the things that Tribes has said, it's not always about degree programs, it's also about certificates, stackable certificates, online learning opportunities, and that's where we are going as an institution, so a lot of this work fits nicely.
Thank you. And lastly, I'm glad you're involved with the strategic planning and that committee. I asked Ellie yesterday from the American Indian Studies Department, but how do you feel the progress is going on the American Indian part of that? What progress, you feel like progress has been being made? And I'm just curious about how the money works on that too.
I am not a member of their committee, but I'm available to them in an advisory role. The strategic plan to me is so incredibly aspirational, right? And that's something we should really kind of pay attention to. You know, how do we build on the strengths that we have? And we really do have a lot of strengths serving American Indian learners and meeting the needs of American Indian communities. It is also, though, tempered by some realistic expectation about what can be delivered in this budget environment and with the complicated nature of just assuring higher ed financing, right? And all of the various players at the state and federal level that are required to keep moving this institution forward. So a part of my advice to that committee is, you know, are we going to become the premier service of, American Indian studies and American Indian learners in the world in the next 5-year strategic plan cycle? No. And no, but neither will anybody else. But we will make progress and position ourselves. The strategic plan is really about really looking at what those strengths are and what are the next steps so that we are poised to continue to grow and meet those needs. And those will happen through conversations with tribal leaders, engaging our American Indian advisory boards, and prioritizing where we grow, and working within the institution to make sure we are ready and taking those next steps. I don't have a magic wand, and neither do anybody else who is trying to do the institutional work at the moment. But it's really about just moving us further down that path, right?
Well, I'm really glad you're advising that committee, so thank you.
They called me their Yoda.
Nice.
I thought that was a compliment. I wasn't quite sure.
It is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. President Cunningham.
Well, thank you for that. And perhaps Chair Hipsch, perhaps I should start calling you our Yoda too as well, Senior Advisor. So, a couple of things I want to go back and follow up from Chair Johnson's comments. We have academic excellence in the Ojibwe language. It is an area of academic distinction for the University of Minnesota. We are committed to it. I do know it's been difficult, in the recent environment, but it is something that we're committed to, and the provost and I are working forward on how we can support this important commitment for language for all the reasons that you say that play into our plan, both for health and tribal health, as well as for the identity. And we heard a wonderful presentation yesterday by folks as well. So I want to call out specifically that we are focused and thinking about how we commit to that properly. I want to call out also that the work you're doing, it's important that you and I are setting up things at a high level, but what you mentioned about the next level down in terms of the infrastructure, in many ways your goal has rightly been, and I applaud, and how we institutionalize these relationships, and so that they're not one person at the top and one tribal leader or one amazing, completely Yoda, but how we have the institutional relationships all the way along. And that's what we're doing now, which is really important and difficult work to scale. It was a pleasure to tour your health facility. I trained at an Indian health facility way back many years ago in Arizona. I didn't know what to expect when I came there, and I was just amazed. What you have done there is tremendous and innovative, and really is world class. And our ability to capture that as a master's in health administration for the tribes could take that knowledge that you have and spin it out. And I think it's a worthy area of continued ongoing conversation with us. In terms of the strategic plan, to answer the board sort of question, and Chair Johnson, I hear your interest on it, those action teams are working. So they haven't yet brought to us actually even their mid-report yet. So we asked them to come to us when we're about 50% way. So that action report hasn't come up to us. When it does, we'll take a look at it and evaluate it. As Senior Advisor Diver noted, we will not change the world. However, I do think we are close to world leading in this regard. We have tremendous strengths, more strengths than most universities. We want to continue to build on them. Unless we have a priority and a strategy around this, we won't. And so it's important that we continue to make progress. Funding for it, obviously there is some funding for our strategic plan, but also our strategic plan is also a strategic plan in the schools and units and how they prioritize the funds that they have, and then also for how we fundraise. And feel free to offer advice on how we fundraise on this topic specifically. Happy to talk to you about that more. And how we fundraise towards priorities. So in some ways it's a prioritization as much as is a budget. Obviously there will be some funds available, but we will also have to use funds in the addition in the budget that exists, and by making priorities and doing some of these things and some of less of other things. And then also this is a way that we fundraise for it together, because there is not a magic central budget wand certainly to fund everyone's focus and dreams, but these are the ways we'll move it forward, and I'm looking forward to seeing that action teams group come forward.
Thank you. Regent Mohammed.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senior Advisor Diver. Really, it is, I think, astounding to hear that we are not, as a university, hopefully imposing our ways on tribal leaders or community members, but we're more so moving at the speed of trust, right? And that we're learning from that level of ancestral knowledge to really change our ways of operation in some orientations. I think the question that came to mind for me, I attended a summit by the Feds in October for a data summit through the Center for Indian Country and Development, and so learned a lot from that space. And so when you mentioned the piece around workforce development, and particularly around workforce development pathways, is there more that we could be doing around creating more culturally responsive and reflective outreach, really thinking about really bringing folks into pathways around the health sciences or really STEAM-related fields? Is there more that we could be doing with our University of Minnesota Extension programs? Just at a high level, how are we grounding in some of the data that the Fed is also carrying with their surveys, but also some of the data that we have in-house? But thank you for all your updates and all the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much. I'm so pleased to hear you know of the work for the Center for Indian Country Development. They do amazing work, and I watched them closely, and at one time was a little more helpful to them as a tribal leader. There are, I think when we look at, like the Indigenous Health Professionals Alliance, there's so many different layers of workforce development, right? And they are really, they're doing boot camps and summer camps and STEM camps and, outreach to let young people know that this is possible. For our work then, if we are able to get their interest, it is, how are we supporting them in the STEM fields? Are they coming from adequately resourced K-12 schools? Likely not. So what are we doing in terms of enabling that undergraduate experience, and then also, preparing them? There's a great post-bac program up at UMD, so that particularly into medical school, but also PhD level science careers, and really enabling that learning year after the bachelor's and support to see themselves as viable candidates to move on. So I think we have all of the pieces there. Are they as comprehensive as we need? No, I think that's really why we want to really look at Indigenous Health Professionals Alliance and how can we align that more at the administrative level within the health serving schools, and making sure that we have retention, not only recruitment, but retention services available. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or any discussion? Hearing none, I'd just like to thank you again for coming, and
Thank you so much.
You should probably, when you do the onboarding up in Duluth, we should probably head up to your clinic up there at some point.
Oh, you would be more than
Yeah,
welcome.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is an update on the University Marketing and Communications from Vice President for Communication, Chris Gotti. Vice President Gotti, you can begin when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Hipsch. Thank you, Regents. I want to start by extending a sincere thank you to each of you for your support of this as a priority for the Regents and for the university. Humble opinion of one, but a strong program in this area is vitally important to the success not only of the University of Minnesota, but also to Minnesota in general. So thank you for your support and investment in this. I also want to extend sincere thanks to our entire team in University Marketing Communications. We're going through a period of building and transition and change as we build a strategy for the future. The team does outstanding work and is strongly committed, as so many are, to doing excellence on behalf of the University of Minnesota. In particular, I want to call out Ann Aronson. Ann serves as our Chief Marketing Communications Officer, has been at the University of Minnesota for 2 decades, and brings to the university prior to that strong experience in marketing and brand at Target. And also Stacy Hiller. Stacy Hiller serves as our Chief Communications Officer. She's been with us for 8 months. Joined us from Medtronic, previously at Cargill and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota. Both are leading strong teams, building strategy, and may join me for the question and answer session. I also want to extend thanks to our partners across the University of Minnesota. We're building new ways of working together, which hasn't always been the case in the past. And with that new ways of working comes together. We're very appreciative, grateful for the collaboration and the partnership we're building together, and see great opportunity as we move forward. Relative to the opportunity, this is a build. We're on a 2 to 3 year trajectory to implement a broader strategy for marketing communications across the University of Minnesota. What I'll share with you today is a snapshot of where we are in that process. Share some highlights of what we believe is strong progress, but we're also realistic that we've got a lot more work to do to bring this to life, and we appreciate your continued support as we do that. I'll share a snapshot of our vision and our strategy, steps we're taking to modernize our communications function, and also share progress on some key initiatives. To President Cunningham's comments earlier in her report, we're being very intentional about being more opportunistic in elevating examples of university excellence. We're also amidst repositioning the brand. You may have noticed. People are noticing, and I'll provide some context about the in-depth, significant research that informed that work, and lend context to where we are in that as we introduce it in the fall. Also share an update on strategies we're building to extend the success of last year's Minnesota State Fair strategy, and actually bring that to 8 county fairs, including Farm Fest, this summer. And then finally, what are we doing and what are we starting to build in terms of a more unified digital strategy across the university, and how that plays an important role in the success of our enrollment marketing strategy. So the first slide is obvious. It's what we're dealing with each and every day, is an increasingly complex external environment, which has huge impact on this strategy. And we're very real about those challenges. We're navigating through them, all of us and our team, each and every day. You see them there and you know them well, but obviously growing enrollment pressure and demographic shifts. What does that mean for us as an organization and our marketing communication strategy, in particular related to enrollment marketing? Public funding instability and rising operational costs. You'll see in our vision in a minute a little bit more emphasis and our goals around how do we, as a function, best support revenue generation. Increasing scrutiny of the value of higher education and skepticism. The very real reality that people are skeptical about whether or not higher education delivers the goods and produces return on investment. How do we address that reality? An overall declining public trust in big institutions. We're one of the biggest, obviously in Minnesota, if not the biggest public institution, and the wave across the globe around declining public trust in institutions, and how do we, in terms of our strategy, address that? And a very, very fragmented media environment. A media environment 20 years ago was 20 years ago. It's much different today, and we have to be very real about how we navigate and express the university's voice in a very fragmented media environment and build trust through those channels, but also modify strategies where we're going more direct to our key audiences. So the net in this complex environment is how do we communicate the university's value, its impact, its mission, and how we do that matters more than ever before. Shared this before, but we did this refresh about a year ago as a university marketing communication team. Why do we exist? We exist to advance the mission and priorities of the University of Minnesota, not just the Twin Cities, the University of Minnesota, and to position the university as a trusted and leading land-grant institution that delivers world-class education, groundbreaking research, and community-engaged outreach to our state and beyond. A couple of things to call out in that mission. We do truly believe there's room for us to lean more heavily into, it's such a duh, it's why we were established, a land-grant institution. And what differentiates us as a land-grant institution, including amongst our peers on the East and West Coast, and putting more energy towards expressing ourselves beyond the state of Minnesota. And how do we accomplish that? Our vision for university marketing communications, where we are going, is to be a trusted strategic partner that connects the mission, priorities, and impact with all stakeholders. Key word in there for us is partnership. We're leaning in heavily into the model that Provost Ritter and others are championing about partnership across the colleges, the schools, the campuses to build and bring this overall strategy to life. You've seen this before, but just a reminder, again, the key word in the midst of this is partnership, not only across our function, but then the leaders, deans, marketing communication leads, and chiefs of staff of the colleges, the campuses, and the units. How do we, across those broad set of stakeholders, achieve strategic alignment and have shared responsibility for our work, and over time, but build a greater sense of both collaboration and trust? We've established 4 primary goals on this 3-year horizon for university marketing communications. Each of them is rooted in specific measures of performance, and we're making that a foundation to our work, short and long term. Are we meeting what we set out to do and instilling performance measures in everything? The first is to strengthen the reputation of the university across key audiences, the state and nation. Our metric will be around, do people have confidence in who we are? Is there trust in the university? The good news is when we ask that question across Minnesota, despite some headlines that make you feel otherwise on occasion, there is strong trust and confidence in the University of Minnesota. We know that baseline. We want to sustain it and strengthen it over time. A second goal is really to empower growth. How do we empower mission and revenue growth through strategic marketing communications? Again, working in partnership. Enrollment is at the top of the list. You heard yesterday the start of a unified, integrated enrollment marketing strategy. We are at the very start of that process and have a lot more work to do to build that integrated strategy that's built in partnership where the campuses can thrive, the colleges and schools can thrive, but we work in a unified fashion. We also very much want to ensure that our function supports external partnerships that grow revenue, fundraising through John Morris and the team in the foundation, but also reach targeted stakeholders in a way where they are helping further the university overall. Third goal is how do we advance one university? That really starts with strong leadership and internal communications. That was an area while we were doing work in that space 18 months ago. We have a strong need, and we're making incredible progress in advancing a strong internal communication strategy that's really foundational to us being able to do work across this space. And then the final goal is how do we elevate marketing communications excellence? How do we integrate best within our department across both marketing and communications? Are we creating an environment where people can thrive and there's a sense for collaboration? But essential in that is not just within university marketing communications, it's extending it to our partners across the campuses, the colleges, and units. That's inventing a new way of working together that maybe we didn't have in the past. We do have a unique moment at the University of Minnesota with the strategic roadmap really as the base of that. But there's many projects that allow us to advance and strengthen the marketing communication strategy and infuse it across everything we're doing. That includes the enrollment plan, our health strategy, our government community relations strategy, evolved philanthropic strategy, and an integrated alumni strategy. At the center of all of that is the refresh of the brand and the right way for us to honor and lift up and celebrate the excellence of the university through the 175th anniversary. There's a variety of ways we will bring this to life. That's the outer circle. I'll share some of those highlights as part of this, but increasingly we're thinking about how do we work in a more unified fashion across all of those activities. And that list at the outer circle certainly is not comprehensive. It's meant to be examples. There's many other ways we will infuse these strategies across all activities. So the net of modernizing our function is to build a strategic plan for the work we do, centered in those goals, find ways to work better together and more effectively together, build capabilities of our group, and really drive those strategic outcomes.
Go ahead. Yep.
Chair Hipsch, if I may, thank you, VP Gotti. Before you get into the individual initiatives, and I maybe should have said something at the top of the hour here, but I just wanted to call out, first of all, to thank you and your team, but you know, the reason we wanted to bring this presentation forward today is really to give the board a sense of we have an entirely different communications and marketing strategy. This has been a board priority for us to lift up, you know, not all parts of that communication, and that communication is how we're communicating across our units, how we're elevating the enrollment, how we're talking about who we are, the good news stories of who we are. All of those things are part of this strategy that that VP Gotti has created. And I want you to understand that, you know, 2 years ago, when I hired Chris about 6 months in, you know, we had interim, we really had the shop at that point needed a rebuild and a refresh thinking in how we do things. And VP Gotti has, in bringing along a new team, is rebuilding the whole infrastructure. He sometimes has called it like we need to put the HVAC in. There's all these structures in place and people and how we do things and how we communicate across the schools, how we communicate across the campuses, how we communicate internally, how we communicate externally. And all of that is taken this strategy and the people that he's brought along to do it. So I just want people to think really broadly about communications and marketing here. It's not one thing. It's this entire strategy and team that we're bringing along, which elevates what we do in a really complicated market, in a really complicated time, where we as a public institution have to communicate who we are and why we are, both to our own people and for our own marketing, and also externally. And so I just want to, first of all, thank VP Gotti and also the team, but set that stage there, which is, there may have been a lot of assumptions about what was in place before, and I want to bust through those. It was not in place before. We're building this entire strategy. It's not just brand, it's the entire marketing and communication shop, how we think, how we function, how you get information, how our students get information, how our leaders get information, how we market, how we respond to press things, all of those things. It's a big operation. Thank you.
Thanks, President Cunningham, and for your support of that as well. So some updates on elevating university excellence and how do we invent new ways of sharing the goodness of the university. I'm just going to highlight a couple of aspects of this, but the concept, and it's a little bit inside marketing communications baseball, 360 storytelling, meaning the good news examples of university excellence. How do we ensure that they're transmitted and shared and reach people across all platforms, inside and outside the organization? There are thousands of great stories at the University of Minnesota. I've heard that loud and clear, not only from this group, from others, but why don't we do a better job of getting them out there? This is the answer to that. And candidly, part of the challenge we have is the size of the University of Minnesota and the fact that not necessarily all the dots connect on a consistent basis in this space. So there's two primary components of allowing this to happen more successfully. One is the HVAC that President Cunningham referred to. It's the content management system, literally a pipeline of content across the university that people contribute to and can pull out of, and it can be tagged. And it's distributed not only to internal communications, but to external communications, shared with media, shared on social media, shared on digital. Whatever way you choose, we just need a mechanism for it to be shared. We're building that. Alicia Barr, a member of our team, is doing great work as part of that. The second is actually a mechanism for people to talk to each other a la the old days of a news desk in a newsroom. That's the Coordinated and Content Collaborative. Under Stacy's leadership, one of the hires is Mesa Denny, who's with us today, joined us about 2 months ago from primarily Fleischman Hillard, but also Ecolab, doing great work assembling people across the university saying, what's your best story pitch this week? You have 90 seconds to tell us, does it align to mission? Does it align to brand? And is an example of university excellence? Not terribly complicated, but it's working. We have now 164 people who are participating in that process so that ideas are surfaced and we can get in front of them, amplify them, and tell them in ways across these various platforms. We're also working hard to strengthen media engagement, news media engagement, traditional but also non-traditional media. We're in a very geopolitical world. We need to make sure the University of Minnesota reaches all forms of media, and also reaches beyond the boundaries of Minnesota to national media. Team is doing great work, building on the strengths of that work and extending. And the final piece is engaging our ambassadors, those who believe in the University of Minnesota, as alumni, as givers, as friends. Are we communicating with them on a consistent basis? We're building that strategy so that we're transmitting some of this good news of university excellence to them on a regular basis, and not just sending them information, creating space for conversation, short and long term. These are just some examples of more recent good news things that surfaced through the process we're creating that extended and received good coverage, not only in the state of Minnesota, but also nationally. Yesterday, we did the 300th startup. That's earning good coverage in our state, and we see more coming. President Cunningham mentioned in her remarks the Okanagan Charter. We expect more coverage on that over the course of the next several weeks, but would just say it's working. Won't dwell on this, already talked about it, but it really starts with strong internal communications. At the centerpiece of that is our work around something called Brief. It's a central digital portal of the best news of the University of Minnesota. It's live all the time, but we do a summer email every Wednesday morning. Christy Wells and the team that leads internal communications does great work in that space, and that's becoming more robust. We're also identifying ways to do strong collaboration with MyU. So there's content sharing to students. The students made a point, which is very appropriate. We very intentionally want to find ways to reach students with information. It's fascinating. The team is doing a version of the news we're transmitting it and studentizing it, if that's a word, in terms and language that they appreciate. Man, the open rates are incredible on that. And so there's intentional strategies we're building to reach students. Expanding relationships with media, a more unified and integrated social media strategy. Mesa Denny and team will lead that strategy as we refresh social media overall. How does it align to what we're doing on digital, our work with grass tops, those key stakeholders, and how do we express as an organization thought leadership? Issues management. We could do this 24/7, 365, and in many days do. Part of what we're being very intentional about is ensuring we're not completely dwelling just on issues management and creating a team that does that important work led by Brianna Reenschuler, who's a new member of our team from the government, but also Joe Lindstroth, who's doing terrific work on that space as well, another new member of our team. They're working in partnership under Stacy's leadership and working very much in collaboration with Mesa, the team doing the bright side. So part of what we're doing in this space is getting out in front of issues wherever we can to ensure that we're fully prepared. That's where the partnership with the campuses, the colleges, and units is so critical, so that we identify what those issues are and make sure the university's response is reflected in what we're doing to ensure that we're holding true to our mission and what our responsibilities are. We also want to identify those issues where we can even speak out more fully on what we're doing to be prepared. And what's in place to ensure that when we have a strong crisis communications strategy, meaning when the worst happens, are we fully prepared and do the dots connect? And then over time, how can we best scale that? We're doing strong work in this space, but this is another example of where we are at a moment in time with a commitment to grow and scale this more fully. We've been very intentional about sharing information with leaders, you included, as issues emerge over time. We're grateful for the partnership with Brian and the team in the Board of Regents office, but leaders across the university, so that when issues rise, do people have the information they need to articulate what the university is doing? Christy Wells and Carrie Nolan and others are doing great work in this space. Part of what we're exploring is what's the best way to reach them, through what level of technology, where is it housed, what do we do, but not have it be intrusive, but be an ad for them. And then also, what's the right way for us to gather people as leaders? One of the things we heard when we did the next event, introducing the strategic roadmap, is people really valued time together across the university about where we were going as a university. We're exploring additional ways to do that, including likely sometime in early June, we'll start a more regular cadence of leader gatherings that complement the communication. Brand. This has been better than a year's worth of work already, as we anticipate the introduction of the brand in the fall of 2026, this fall at the start of the next academic year. It's rooted first in the brand promise. We did our first research in April of 2025. We asked them about their opinions of the University of Minnesota, its brand today, and just a reminder, there's a brand promise and there's a tagline. The brand promise is the essence of what makes the University of Minnesota unique and distinct. That's what you see in front of you. There was a clear call coming out of the research in April that it was time to refresh the brand of the University of Minnesota, to refresh the brand promise. That Driven to Discover as a tagline, yes, was indeed successful, but it represented a moment in time where the university really wanted to advance its excellence in research discovery, but the broad input we received clearly pointed to that Driven to Discover as a tagline and the brand it represented did not reflect the comprehensive excellence of the University of Minnesota in education and community outreach and service. We did research across a broad range of people, including students, retirees, faculty, staff, prospective students, parents, alumni, donors, focus groups with cabinet, dean's council, deans in Duluth, campus enrollment leads. It was unanimity of opinion that it was time for us to move to a new brand promise. So you see it here. We are the energy for change, the restless power that improves lives for Minnesotans, the nation, and the world. The University of Minnesota's ambitions must exceed all expectations. Our objectives must be greater than anything we have already accomplished. We are the vital force that turns learning into action, exploration into outcomes, and achievements into value. So I've just shared that in a public setting, which you're not supposed to do with a brand promise. This is meant to be the recipe that drives everything we do across all facets of our communications, not just a tagline, not just an ad campaign, but all of our communications. It's meant to be the driver of all that we do. So I'd like to share now is just a video that represents that brand promise.
When today becomes history, what will remain? Not the noise, not the headlines. What will remain is everything we do that moves us forward. What will remain is the education we advance, the life-saving discoveries that outlive us, the research and scholarship we choose to pioneer. The University of Minnesota is where extraordinary things endure. And what we do will remain for those who come after. We leave a future of students living with purpose. We leave a future of discoveries that heal, protect, and sustain. We leave a future of healthier Minnesota communities. We leave a future of facilities built for the next generation. This is what we leave behind. This is what carries our future forward. The University of Minnesota. Leave a future.
So one thing to note as part of this strategy, we'll get more into this on the brand overall, but the primary brand we're advancing is not the tagline. The primary brand we're advancing is the University of Minnesota. That does not mean we're walking away from campus branding or college branding, but the brand that has the most value and the most resonance across all stakeholders is the University of Minnesota. As part of that, at the right moment, in the right way, we will also introduce a tagline. That's what's meant for the fall. When we introduce Leave a Future as the punctuation mark on the creative that you just saw. But we start first with University of Minnesota and advancing and elevating that brand across Minnesota and across the US. So there are many elements of brand. So just if you'll allow me just to provide just a little bit of context across those various elements. It starts with the brand promise that you've seen. It also includes things like color palette and creating consistency with maroon and gold. We have work to do there. It's consistency in application of word marks, including what is the campus, college, articulation of their brand within the University of Minnesota brand, that those campus college brands aren't going away, nor are their mascots. None of that's leaving. It's just creating greater consistency in how the University of Minnesota brand is articulated through what's at the end of this wheel, the brand architecture. So how are the word marks represented? How do we ensure consistent typography? What's the right application phased in over time of a tagline? What are the key messages that back it up? How do we express that as marketing communication professionals through both voice and tone? And what's the architecture of how logos are used? And how do we start with the University of Minnesota? How do we bring forward the sub-elements of the brand at the campus, college, school, and unit level on a consistent basis? So there are many experts in brand. I want to just call out one, number 3, David Ogilvy, who is an icon in advertising. You see his quote, I won't swear in public, but the key word I do want to call out is the word perseverance. Doing this brand work is really hard. It's really hard in any organization. It's incredibly hard in large organizations. Let's just add the element of a public organization to it that's decentralized. The challenge is significant in this space, but we believe and we are confident in the work we're advancing in this space that's truly rooted in research. We've been very intentional about that research process. It's been comprehensive. You see some of the numbers there. We did a random sample of 13,000 alumni donors, including on-the-fence donors, disengaged alumni. We did a random sample of 20,000 internal audiences, faculty, staff. It does include retirees. A random sample of undergraduates, more than 9,000. Also graduate students. We did external audiences across Minnesota. We also did national opinion leaders in key markets that ultimately will drive our success and whether or not this ultimately resonates. We asked them input in especially a set of research done in November of 2025 across all of those audiences. And in those audiences, Leave a Future was the clear preferred choice in quantitative testing. And want to specifically call out, and we heard from Chancellor Carroll yesterday about how students truly are committed to building their future, leaving a future. This particular tagline, which we will introduce in the appropriate ways at the appropriate moments, has incredible resonance with students, but it really actually was the top choice across Minnesota general public and opinion leaders and 3/4 of our national audience. So where we are in the process, we've done, as mentioned, significant audience research. That phase is completed. Again, it was a 2-phase process, April and November of 2025. We've articulated the promise of the brand through the brand promise. We've begun to apply that in a variety of ways. I'll share that more in a minute. We are in the creative development process. You saw the video. We're refining that video. We're refining that video in part based on continued feedback we hear from folks. And then we will bring that to life across paid media, earned media, and owned media, meaning we will pay for broadcast ads. We will build and send our own content through owned media out from the university that are stories we tell, but we also tell it through earned media, through news media and social media. All of this will be applied throughout the course, built yet this spring into the summer and launched in the fall to coincide with the start of the next academic year. When we did that research in both April and November of 2025, we heard loud and clear that stakeholders felt there was great opportunity for the University of Minnesota to express 3 things. More heart. and soul, so more emotion, the outcomes of our mission and how we're driven by mission, and our collective work and our collective approach. So you feel a little bit of that in the video you saw. What we're simultaneously underway with is what's the essence of our ad campaign, and how will that be realized through broadcast ads, paid social ads. It's extending the concept of that brand video you saw into other applications that build on and give us greater heart and soul, our collective work, our mission rooted in our brand promise, but also coming out of the moment we lived through Operation Metro Surge. We actually believe there's a bit of an opportunity nationally, as we go national, to express the uniqueness of the University of Minnesota and Minnesota at this moment, in keeping with that spirit of Minnesota that was realized during that time. We're also looking at more consistency in visual identity. What's the typography we use on a more consistent basis, and what are the tools we create in the lower right for our partners across the university to use to create that consistency. I will tell you that our partners at the marketing communication level very much want this. They love this kind of move towards greater consistency, and we're working to build tools that allow that to happen. We want to integrate this into everything we do, and we will. External, you see the many applications that we'll realize across the state and around the nation. We want to, on the far right, integrate it into environmental, including athletic venues and licensed products. How do we realize it internally through the various platforms we're creating? And then what are the ways we integrate it at the center into events, including Welcome Week for students, convocation, homecoming, commencement, and also what's the right way for us to honor and lift up and celebrate the 175th? And then finally, how does all of this align to the things we talked about before in terms of the roadmap, recruitment, marketing? These are some of the ways we're accomplishing this complex lift across this large university. We've already held what we're calling language labs, where people, as marketing communication professionals, come together to live into the brand promise and start to integrate it into the work they're creating, the words they write, the stories they tell. People see great opportunity for this brand in that, and we want to extend that work. We're also creating a convening body called a brand integration group that meets on a bi-weekly basis to make sure the many moving parts move in concert. We're doing immersion sessions. In fact, there's one going on right now across some high-profile parts of the university to build shared strategy. It's not just us in University Marketing Communications. We're partnering with Gopher Athletics, with the campuses, with various offices, various schools to bring this to life at a strategy level. And then on the right, finally, is the workshops where larger groups of people bring it to life. You're aware of our energy we built last year around the state fair. We saw good progress there. We see greater opportunity there to integrate not only the activation and introduction of the refined brand, but also to honor and lift up the 175th anniversary. One specific thing I just want to call out on the state fair strategy is that we haven't been present in the education building, which feels like a miss. From many people's perspective, we recognize that. We will be in the education building this year. County fairs. We've identified 7 county fairs that we will be part of this year across greater Minnesota to lift up the excellence of the University of Minnesota and work in partnership, not just to introduce the brand, but to help support enrollment marketing, and that includes at Farm Fest. It offers and affords us an opportunity to live into our commitment to all of Minnesota, to expand awareness and understanding of how we're delivering on that commitment, but to inspire engagement, especially around enrollment, and to reach some key audiences that we might not otherwise reach. The final thing I'll just draw on is we're building a more unified overall digital presence so that when you start with our web presence, you start at the University of Minnesota, and there's a strong through line to each of the campuses and a stronger through line to our colleges. It really allows us to showcase more the one university approach. It also, I think we need to keep our eyes squarely on the reality of how digital search is changing dramatically moment by moment, and ensuring that we not only are successful in this space, but we thrive and support the university's overall strategies in this space. And just want to call out and thank already Chief Information Officer Tarek Tomes for his collaboration and partnership, along with the campuses, colleges, and units in bringing that to life. That was a lot. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. That was a great report. President Cunningham.
Chair Hipsch, and thank you very much, Vice President Gotti. I'm so excited about the work of you and your team. And again, I just want to call out and hope the board, and I think from your presentation, understands, this shop and this work is so much bigger than any one component, right? So historically, I think the operation, at least in the years perhaps right before me, was only able to just be very reactive to the crisis of the day. And there is, all of our lives are 20% crisis in one way or another, right? There's always a crisis of the day, and we absolutely need communications to be able to be responsive to that. But we also need a sophisticated, modern communications and marketing team that can elevate who we are as a university, elevate our work in communication with each other and to strategy. And so, with Chris Gotti's leadership, he has hired a world-class team here with expertise that are truly building a sophisticated, modern communications shop that is befitting of the 5th largest employer in the state and a top-tier research university in the country. We can't certainly be just reactive. I want to continue to highlight that when we talk about that concept of brand or one university, it is also one university on 5 campuses. And we will indeed continue to have the moniker of each of our campuses be prominent and be lifting up their additional identity. And I just want to say that really clearly to all of our campuses and to all of our schools. In terms of when we think about finally here the brand, I'll remind people that tagline rolls out in the fall, not even today, but I thought it is important for the board to know about that. It will not just be one video. It will be a whole series of creative around that. And in the meantime, it is the brand that we are elevating. We've already been starting to do that. You hear me talk about, and others in our leadership team talk about, how we're the vital force for change, the essence of who we are and in that community spirit. And it's the brand of the University of Minnesota that we're lifting up here. And that's far more than, any one tagline that eventually will be introduced. But first, we lift up the brand of the university. It's important for us to do this not only locally, but also nationally. As we heard yesterday for enrollment, we're in a very competitive marketplace nationally. Our students locally are also looking at all the national campaigns. I promise you, all of our other universities are indeed, none of this is free, are indeed spending money on marketing and communications. Just look at any billboard that says North Dakota on it, any bus that goes by or train that has completely wrapped with another university's marketing and communications budget on it. Our students also need to hear from us who we are, what we deliver, and we need to do that locally, and we need to do that nationally. That builds our reputation as a university, and
The spend here is obviously more sophisticated than what has kind of been out there in the ether. Is completely appropriate, and indeed, we have to be spending money on marketing and communications in a competitive marketplace that we are, but also to tell our story right. So I'm very grateful to Chris and to the team, and for the new folks that are on the team. He's built a wonderful team over this past year, as well as the long history of experience that some of his other members bring. So thank you so much, VP Gotti.
Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation, and this this gets a lot of hearts and minds going on these things. But I want to tell you that a few things. One is that when I got into my leadership role, a wise mentor of mine said, "You only have 3 jobs, Penny. It's just strategy, team, and communications." So the importance of communications and that functioning is huge. So I really appreciate, first of all, the rebuild of the team and the refocus on this so that we can all understand things more completely. So thank you for that. I also totally appreciate the context in which you presented this in. I think we were very disadvantaged as a board, and I think members of the public were too, that a tagline got out there with wholly inappropriate numbers associated with its cost, and that was all that was there, without the context surrounding it. And you've helped provide that in a way that allows me anyway, to see this differently than just the line itself, which I thought, I don't know if I like that. And now, you start to see this. And I've said a few times here, but with when you're thinking of branding, your say has to match your do. And the way you're contextualizing this, that's what this place does. The faculty, the staff, the students, they change the world for the better. They do that. And then we're tripping over miracles all the time of things that are being done. So I understand that too. So I just appreciate you giving me at least a much fuller picture of what this looks like. I like it better now, I'll have to say. So there's that. Yeah, so thank you.
Chair Hips, Regent Wheeler, just thank you. Thank you for that expression of support. Just a couple things to note. So there are some very famous taglines that were introduced that were not well received at the outset. It's probably the best brand in the world, Just Do It, is at the top of the list. And to your point, we're not introducing a tagline without creative, and we're also doing it in ways that are strategic so that we build understanding of what the tagline is as we evolve it. And the other piece, just relative to the spend topic, this was actually approved by the Regents, my understanding, prior to my arrival in 2024. It's a 5-year program for expenditures of about $3 million annually for paid media at the state and national level. That puts us squarely in the middle of the Big Ten in terms of what our peers are doing. So just appreciate your continued context setting around that spend. It's a significant investment. We recognize that. But again, that points back to, does this further the university, and does it further its mission and its priorities, and allow us to thrive going forward?
Thank you. Go ahead, Regent.
Quick follow-up then. And the question I wanted to ask is that how do we know it's been successful?
So the same exhaustive research that we did to build this approach for a brand promise with those same set of stakeholders inside and outside the organization, we will continuously repeat.
Great. And that was extensive.
Yep.
Yeah.
And actually those bottom line performance metrics, are we moving the needle? Those are the measures, and that's why those performance measures are so essential.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Turner.
Thank you, Chair Hips. I'll start off my comments with saying, there's something about being your third year regent that you kind of reflect back on your first year. And in my other world, both at the state and now the national level, communication has always been an issue as president of state and the federal. And it's always been a problem getting the information. And I've always been supportive in the nursing world of expending money on communication and thinking that it's never enough. Now, granted, in the nurses' world, if you really want a nurse to know something, you have to put it on a flyer across from the toilet in the bathroom, because that's what they... But I mean, it gets to be that much. But I've always seen, oh, seriously, people. But you can, in my mind, you cannot spend enough on communication. And the reason I bring this up is because it appears like it's been an issue. So when I was, suggested to maybe go for the regent role, I went, well, I've done healthcare for 2.5, 3 decades here. Maybe I'll go into higher ed. It has less problems. That was my first question. And they would have communication solved. Well, then I get here, find out about the decentralized, where every school is treated as their own business, and then they all have their own communication. And I just went, okay, this is my pet peeve. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. Okay? And I found that very frustrating. And so when President Cunningham, et cetera, started to come up with these ideas that maybe we do need to do something with our communication, I'm going to tell you that, like at our national level of my organization, we have a very extensive communication, and it pays off in results, not at only the state, but the federal level, and the national level, and the global level. It pays off. And so I'm just here to go, I'm fully supportive in what we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Regent Mohammed.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Vice President Gade. It's just great being able to see the place-based strategies that you all are putting forward, really thinking about how do we really better strategize around how do we actually get to where the people are. One element that does come to mind for me is, how is the model? Is it going to be like a hub and spoke model? Is it the communications team that's going to be at the state fair? Is it different divisions or colleges or offices that are going to be there? And really, how are you all envisioning that? And if that isn't fully thought out yet, that's fine. And then just a secondary piece is just, how are we thinking about other fairs or larger gatherings that are happening in our backyard where we know community is gathering, that we could easily be, communicating the great work of the university and how folks can really get involved with us?
Chair Hips, Regent Mohammed, thank you. Just a couple of comments. Just first on the state fair strategy. The existing reality prior to a year or so ago was that we had 12 locations of presence for the university across the Minnesota State Fair, each doing their own thing independently. And last year's step was to bring together, thanks to the partnership of our colleagues in various parts of the university, into a more cohesive approach, allowing them to still accomplish what their objectives were within their local unit, but still have the continuity of the University of Minnesota through a centralized theme and some centralized capability and strategy. We achieved a level of results with that. We see greater opportunity to strengthen that, and those conversations have literally been ongoing since last year's State Fair. What we're adding to the mix of that is presence in the education building. We're building what that presence will be, but we know that it will have a strong component around enrollment marketing as part of the enrollment marketing strategy, but also reflect not only the brand, the 175th anniversary, but also utilize assets from the county fair strategy. So the things we do in those county fairs across the state of Minnesota will also be repurposed as part of the state fair strategy. So it's meant to be integrated, hub and spoke, a cohesive approach. But in all of this, we're very cognizant of the local unit, the campus, the college, the school has to be able to meet its objectives. But we also have to, in the right way, have a through line of the University of Minnesota, its brand, and its strategies. You had a second one, which
Yeah, just thinking about other gatherings, right? Particularly around, at least for the Twin Cities in particular, there is a lot of cultural and heritage, large gatherings, right, and festivals, right, and there's tabling opportunities. Yeah. Just thinking about how's the university thinking about their presence there.
Thank you. So there is already some existing presence that we're doing at a university level. Of course, there's hundreds of things happening at a local level. And how do we, in a 2 to 3 year strategy, how do we phase into those and create greater integration, it represents an opportunity for us to do more in that space and utilize some of the assets we're creating for local application. The other element of this is what's the right level of visibility for our leaders, President Cunningham, you as Regents, others, at some of those local gatherings. So we're simultaneously, we didn't talk about it to a large degree in this presentation, building an executive visibility strategy. So how do we make sure that in those settings that leaders of the university are present and expressing our commitment to those groups as they gather?
Thank you. Regent Verhalen.
Thank you. And I really appreciate, President Cunningham, your comments about every campus continuing to have its own identity. That
University of Minnesota Duluth.
Yes, that unification is important. We are all the same system. And the 5 campuses are all an important part of that puzzle, but each one does have its own identity, and I appreciate that. But to that point, Vice President Gotti, how are you envisioning that the university is going to balance that unification of the central brand with those distinct needs, identities, recruitment needs of each of the 5 campuses?
Chair Hips, Regent Verhalen, we very much are cognizant of it, and we are in that build phase right now. It's reflected first in the brand architecture and making sure that we ensure that the campuses are sustained in terms of their local identity, but it's also realized through the unified enrollment marketing strategy. So what is the distinctiveness of each campus? How does that shine brightest and loudest in the strategy and the targeted activity, but also how does that have then the bed of the University of Minnesota, its brand and its strength? So it's meant to be integrated, but it needs to, and it's not just the campuses, it's also the schools and the colleges. Right. So the vision would be, how do you apply it locally, do that targeted local work based on the strategy we're building together, but also that, again, through line of the University of Minnesota. So it's a truly integrated approach. It's not easy. It's going to be a huge lift. We can do it.
Great. Thank you.
So,
President Cunningham would.
If I may, Chair Hipsch and Regent Verhalen, I want to just emphasize this point because I know it's a really touchy point. So for example, when when it's a university, when there's a Block M brand, there will still be listed the Duluth component underneath it. And in fact, the Twin Cities component underneath it. We'll be calling out the different, and this is what he's working on now, the different campuses will always be appropriately noted. And then, of course, in their individual marketing, it's one university, but that means there's 5 campuses. And with that, then the next step of that is people recognize the university brand, which is a good brand, but then depending on who you are, you might be attracted more to the wonderful identity of the kind of experience you're going to get on Crookston or in Duluth. And that's the next part of the brand marketing for them. And by elevating the higher boat, we elevate all ships, but then also we get to point out what the fabulous components of, for example, University of Minnesota Duluth are, and that comes through with clarity. And that's the goal and the work that's happening right now, but that is 100% the intent.
Thank you. So last night we were at, I was talking to a couple of Regents professors, and they just came across a solution for a very complex medical situation, chemistry people, chemical engineers, and so then they, and they're going to save a lot of lives with that. But they're also, that might be one of the numbers. They just did a startup. They might, that's where they were at the synopsis where spending turns into investment. Our investment turns into return. And so, and so it was just very impressive. I mean, and they're not doing it for the money. They're not doing it for anything. They're doing it to solve a complex medical problem. And they're going to save lives. So we have to tell that story, and we have to use our 650,000 system alumni to help tell that story because they can, they love the university and they're going to share everything. We have to protect that brand, as you say. And just one, I'm so glad that you're going down to Farm Fest and you're going to the fairs and state fair. One thing right now, farmers are struggling in a big way, and so when I struggled as a farmer, I didn't, I really leaned on the university a lot. Whether when I had bird flu or whatever it is, that's when you lean on the university the most, because you have to either gain efficiency or you have to solve a really complex problem that you can't solve yourself. And so for that, I commend you. And the message there has to be, let us help solve this problem. So we're with you. We're with the whole state. So thank you for this presentation. It was great.
Chair Hipsch, you're going to join us at the Otter County Fair, right? Fair, where we're going to be, right?
Bring out your inner otter.
Okay, now we have 2 fairs.
All right, we'll have to work out the details later. But
I'm Perm, and I think you're going to Fergus Falls.
All right. I got to work on that. Okay, all right, we'll work on that.
Still a great county.
Well, but I want to thank VP Gotti and have the board know that this was a board priority for this year that you set last year for us to really work on our marketing and communication strategy as a whole. This is an example of that, and certainly I will continue to hold VP Gotti and his team accountable for moving the metrics forward and for checking in to make sure that the needle is indeed moving in the way that we want it to move for the university. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Okay, now we're going to move on to committee reports. And let's begin with the Litigation Review Committee and Mary Turner.
Yeah, it's a biggie. The Litigation Review Committee met on April 9th, 2026. At this meeting, the committee adopted a resolution that authorized the closing of the meeting to discuss matters subject to the attorney-client privilege. Thank you, Chair Hipsch. That concludes my report.
Thank you. For the report of the Academic Health Committee, Regent Lugar, your report, please.
Thank you, Chair Hipsch. The Academic Health Committee did not consider any action items this month. Our first item was an introduction of Interim Executive Vice President and Interim Dean of the Medical School, Dr. Carol Bradford, as the committee's new Senior Leader Liaison. She emphasized the impact of our health sciences schools on health and healthcare delivery, including in our rural and underserved communities. Having dedicated her career to education, research, patient care, and mentorship, the committee is confident in her ability to advance the committee's work and support the university's mission to strengthen health across the state and beyond. Our second item was an update from Dean Connie Delaney on the School of Nursing's strategic initiatives that are addressing state workforce needs. The committee was particularly impressed with the collaboration happening with internal and external partners and the continuous innovation within the School of Nursing. The committee enjoyed a robust discussion on pathways for nursing students and ways to address the nationwide nursing shortage. We look forward to hearing future updates from all of our health sciences schools as we continue to serve the healthcare needs of all Minnesotans. Thank you, Chair Hipsch. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Chair Regent Lugar. For the report of the Audit and Compliance Committee, Regent Verhalen, please.
Thank you, Chair Hipsch. The Audit and Compliance Committee did not consider any action items this month. The committee heard an analysis of the university's compliance landscape from Executive Vice President for Finance and Operations Goldman. This provided an opportunity for the committee to hear about efforts being made to strengthen coordination and create system-wide alignment across compliance functions. The committee discussed recommendations to enhance the current compliance framework and will be interested to see the implementation of these new changes. Next, Associate Vice President Catherine Bonison provided an update on our Enterprise Risk Management Program, or ERM, and highlighted changes to the institutional risk profile, process, and ERM governance framework. The discussion highlighted how the ERM program will benefit from changes to the compliance structure and create future deliverables designed to support discussions on risk trends and opportunities. The committee again looks forward to engaging in future conversations on this important topic. Finally, the committee received 2 information items: the required review of audit and non-audit services provided to the university, and an engagement that required after-the-fact reporting. Thank you, Chair Hipsch. That concludes my report.
Okay, we will now turn back to Regent Verhalen for the report of the Governance and Policy Committee.
The Governance and Policy Committee also did not consider any action items this month. Our first agenda item provided an opportunity for committee members to offer feedback on the active learning days that we've added to Regent schedules, including those for 2025-2026. The committee expressed enthusiasm for engaging with the university community in the places and spaces where mission-critical work is happening, while intentionally connecting those visits to key board priorities and areas advancing Elevate Extraordinary 2030. I encourage those who are not on the committee to provide any feedback you have to the board office as they start planning for the next academic year for our active learning opportunities. In response to Regent interest, our second item was a high-level overview of the governance of artificial intelligence. The discussion identified emerging best practices and showed how our peers are thinking about governing in this space. It also highlighted ways that AI will shape our work and the work of our board office. What was clear in that discussion is that the university is at the forefront of AI, and to stay at the forefront, it will require us to continue to engage with President Cunningham and her team as to how we govern AI. Thank you, Chair Hipsch. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Next, we will receive the reports of the Mission Fulfillment and Finance and Operations Committees. Their reports will note those items the committees approved on behalf of the board. I will start by delivering the report of the Finance and Operations Committee. The Finance and Operations Committee unanimously approved one item on behalf of the board this month. That item was the consent report, which included an appointment to the Hormel Institute Advisory Board, 2 employment agreements, 1 purchase of goods and services, and 2 real estate transactions. There were no other items to report this month. That concludes the Finance and Operations Committee report. For the Mission Fulfillment Committee, Regent Tad Johnson, your report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Mission Fulfillment Committee unanimously approved one item on behalf of the board this month. That item was the consent report, which included approval of changed academic programs, approval of discontinued academic programs, approval of new academic programs, conferral of faculty emeritus titles, and the conferral of tenure for new hires. There were no further action items approved this month. Thank you, Chair Hipsch. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Johnson. The Presidential Performance Review Committee, which includes myself and Regents Ruth Johnson and Wheeler, met on April 8th. At the meeting, the committee adopted a resolution that authorized the closing of the meeting. We anticipate delivering a summary of our conclusions at the June Board of Regents meeting. That concludes the Presidential Performance Review Committee report and the report of committees. That brings us to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business to come before the board? Seeing none, is there any new business to come before the board? Okay, so we will now consider a resolution to close the meeting for the purpose of receiving a briefing related to the security of university leadership, including members of the Board of Regents. Executive Director Steves, will you please read the resolution included in the docket?
The Regents of the University of Minnesota resolution to conduct non-public meeting of the Board of Regents. Whereas the Board of Regents will receive a security briefing related to the University of Minnesota, and disclosure of the information to be discussed would pose a danger to public safety or compromise security procedures or responses. Now therefore be it resolved that in accordance with Minnesota Statutes 13D.05 subdivision 3D, a non-public meeting of the Board of Regents be held on Friday, April 10th, 2026 in the boardroom, 600 McNamara Alumni Center, for the purpose of a briefing related to the security of university leadership, including members of the Board of Regents.
Thank you, Executive Director Steves. Is there a motion to approve the resolution? So moved. Is there a second? There is a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. The motion is approved, and we will now take a brief recess to close the meeting.